What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Gsluke here with our DFS value plays for this week's Waste Management Phoenix Open. Yesterday with our core picks, went over the top of the pricing board on Draftkings. Today, gonna focus on some of the cheaper plays, priced $8,000 and below, and I'm looking at to try and get some much needed salary savings and some ownership leverage while we're at it. So these are meant for large field GPPs, players that not only have a solid floor, but also in this star-studded field can still bring us that top 5, top 10 upside. So a lot to get into. Let's go ahead and get this thing rocking. Siwoo Kim is the first player I have my eye on this week, $7,800, so certainly towards the top of this quote-unquote value range, but still a player that's checking plenty of boxes for me. And the one thing I want to start with here would be his approach play. I mean, over the last 36 measured rounds, has been one of the best players in the field, best player in the world in that conversation over that time frame, gaining over a stroke per round with the iron play. That, of course, is way better than his baseline, but he's no stranger to being absolutely on fire, whether it's off the tee or on approach. The off the tee play hasn't been quite as stout as the approach play, where you can see he's right around a neutral, but he's not known for being one of those bombers that's carrying it 310, 315 yards. So you kind of got to take what you can get from Siwoo. And at a desert kind of track, you've seen him have success at the Amex before. Also, the same kind of green setup that you have here with Bermuda overseeded with some POA and Rye. I believe it's actually a bent grass rather than a Rye over there for the Amex in the stadium course at PGA West. But just like a Sam Burns, I'm taking a look at a lot of these metrics, and you can see it's not like he's a one stroke gained per round like a Sam Burns that we talked about yesterday with our core plays, but he's ran around a neutral, which compared to his last 36 rounds is a significant plus. You can see he's a slight negative there. He has since made the change from a blade style putter to using kind of like the broomstick mallet that something like Adam Scott uses. So there's a little bit of an adjustment period, but the last few times we've seen Siwoo, he's been in contention. He's putted a lot better than he was putting for the last 2-3 months before then. So I think the changes are suiting him well. The results would certainly reflect that. You can see a couple top 25 finishes. Of course, had the win there a few weeks ago. Not a surprise to anybody. If you've seen this kid over the years, he's won at the Players Championship, which is one of my top comp courses for this week. Another one of those Florida tracks where it's all about ball striking, and you have the same kind of greens that you have for this week as well. So the overseed situation definitely favors a Siwoo Kim. The ball striking stats have been just, at least the approach play, right, has been on another level for quite some time. In the event history, though it's not fantastic, he has made 3 of his last 5 cuts, did have nearly a top 25 finish last year. So I'd say that's the one thing left to be desired with the Siwoo Kim there, but check in a lot of the boxes I'm looking for, and at $7,800 has enough upside for me to buy in. Next up, we've got Taylor Pendrith, who 3.7%, if this holds up from an ownership perspective, it's going to be one of the best plays on the slate. Last week, at least from the measured rounds that we have at Pebble Beach, was not very good on approach. In fact, lost strokes on approach in 1 out of the 2 rounds. Off the tee wasn't much better in both of the rounds. It really carried himself with the putter, where he gained over 5 strokes putting in his 2 rounds around Pebble. And while that's unlikely to be sustained, we also don't have the full picture from the other 2 rounds that week that weren't measured, that didn't have the lasers, the shots gained metrics reflected there. And you'd have to think that Taylor Pendrith made up for it the other 2 days. He's one of the best ball strikers on tour. Coming in, had been a prolific gainer off the tee for at least 3 or 4 weeks. Gains of 3, 4, 5 strokes off the tee in events. There's not many guys in the world that can do so, right? There's a John Rahm, Rory McIlroy that can go out there and gain that prolifically off the tee, and then a Taylor Pendrith. And self-admittedly, at Pebble, he told some of the reporters the reason why he didn't hit driver there on 18 for his final round on Monday is he wasn't hitting the ball well off the tee. So if he's able to go out there and be a neutral when he really doesn't have his best stuff, imagine he goes out there and he's torching a place for those 3 or 4 strokes gained off the tee. So the top 10 finish last week, I think, is going severely underlooked, right? He finished in 7th place, and he, as of right now, is like 3.7% owned. Before that, was able to make the cut. A couple missed cuts, hardly made the cut there with a 66, top 15 finish. So he's had some bright spots of late. He's also had a few ugly finishes. So you're not getting a safe play here, and the shots gained metrics I want to talk about these two. So you can see gaining a bunch off the tee, but losing in the other three categories. A lot of that is really dragged down when Taylor Pendrith is off. He ejects from golf tournaments, right? He's no stranger to being like 5-6 over par. There's certain guys that are prone to that, that just end up blowing up, and when they do so, it really impacts the shots gained metrics, right? Those outliers of losing 5-6 strokes on approach really take away from those gains where he's consistently going out there, whether it's, just like a stroke gain per round, half a stroke gain per round consistently. All of that gets thrown out the window when you have a tournament where you're linking together multiple of those finishes. So those negatives right here, right? This 60th, right? Where you made the cut, didn't do anything. Missed the cut, right? 66 over there, right? That's nearly last place for the players that made the cut, are taking away from his track record. And people, especially the ones that are using their modeling, just looking at the stats on a week like this, aren't going to play a Taylor Pendrith, right? They're not going to look at the top 10 finish and realize this is a perfect course for somebody at $7,400. One of the best off the tee players in the field. If you guys have seen my core plays video or my course breakdown, you know that off the tee play is my #1 key stat, especially driving distance that is rewarded heavily around a track like TPC Scottsdale, and approach play. And when Taylor Pendrith is getting into contention, typically he's gaining a bunch on approach. And last week, right, only 2 of the rounds were measured. He was right around in neutral with the iron play. If he can go out there and improve on that, and again, I'm expecting those other 2 rounds around Pebble were probably a lot better on approach than what we saw for the 2 with the shots gained metrics. He could really be in for a big week here. And only 3.7% owned, a fair price tag at $7,400. Count me in for sure. All right, third up, we've got Kurt Kitayama, somebody I've been playing for seemingly the last 3-4 weeks. You've seen him during the fall swing, took plenty of chances on Kurt, and definitely last week as well, so it was close to paying off. We had him in the final grouping, and he melted down like a nuclear reactor. It was unfortunate. He had the right miss going all day, nuked a shot on number 2, the easiest hole on the golf course, directly into a hazard, a canyon. So it was one of those days for Kurt. He seemingly kept a really good attitude. It didn't look like he was down on himself. He was still joking with his partners, talking to Rosie out there, who was in contention. So I don't think it shook him as much as I think it would have shooken a lot of other golfers, because he's been there before. He's been into contention. He's been runner-up multiple times during his rookie season last year, and I'm not going to let that get him off of me. I mean, I'm expecting that to really impact his ownership. As of right now, I only have him at 4% projected ownership, and we should be running to the window to play this guy. Last week, the ball striking was fantastic. A lot of it we didn't have shots gained metrics for, but because he was in contention as early as round 1, we saw a lot of his shots. So whether he was at Spyglass, he was playing Monterey Peninsula, we were getting plenty of coverage of Kurt, and he looked like his usual self, hitting almost every single green. Not very accurate off the tee, but you can get away with that around a TPC Scottsdale. And he's usually not the most consistent putter, but he was making a few putts from that 10 to 15 foot range. Nothing drastic. If you take a look at the 2 measured rounds for last week, he was right around a neutral, actually a slight negative with the putter, which is kind of what we're used to with a Kurt Kitayama. But anytime we've seen him on these Bermuda greens overseeded with whether it's ryegrass, bent grass, so on and so forth, he's been his best self. The Florida swing, Honda Classic really sticks out. A few other events over the schedule that you have this hybrid situation have been some of his better putting weeks on tour. And at the Honda, he gained over 5 strokes putting that week. So if we get that kind of performance from Kurt, he's going to run away with a golf tournament because that's how good his just tee to green play is. And that's the #1 key stat I'm looking at here. So I'm not expecting that 5 shots gained performance. I think that's going to happen like once a year for somebody like Kitayama. But at an event like this, if he goes out there and he's just even a slight positive with the putter, that's probably him getting into the top 10, which in a star-studded field like this, you'd be thrilled with that performance at $7,000, let alone if he finds that magic, right, that he was able to find there at PGA National, has found a few times over his career in some of his international wins, other top 3 finishes in extremely strong fields overseas. It's usually when he finds that magic with the putter. And again, if I'm going to take a shot on these sort of players, it's on the surface that statistically they've done it on before. And for the Honda Classic, at the very least, that's where Kurt was able to pop. So if you take a look at the shots gained, right, they look a little bit better because of last week, but a lot of his better rounds weren't actually got in the shots gained, right, because it was only 2 of the rounds at Pebble that were counted, but he's gaining close to a third of a stroke per round, both off the tee and on approach. Around the green, gaining close to half a stroke per round. And I think that's something that people really discount with Kurt, is his short game is among the best on the PGA Tour. Whether it's out of the rough, whether it's on a shaved down area, he has all of the shots in the bag. You have to have that to be able to compete around the PGA National. Just such a difficult course, such a demanding course when it comes to that short game. And of course, he was runner-up finish there last year. And again, I'm looking at that a lot. I watched it in person. I watched Kurt play probably 36 of his 72 holes last year. So very familiar with how he was able to take that down. And it's one of my top comp courses this week down there for the Honda Classic. So love Kurt Kitayama this week. The putter rate that's been the huge negative for him, right? Pretty much undoing all of his around the green work. But hopefully we get that magic on these Bermuda greens. You can see event history doesn't exist, right? He's never played here before. You wouldn't expect that for him being a rookie last year. In the recent form, right, though it's been a little bit volatile, right, he's starting to come along, right? 29th place finish. He did have the missed cut, hardly made the cut there with a 73rd place finish. But the further back you look, it's, second place finish, right? A couple missed cuts. Second place, right? Another top 10 or a couple few more missed cuts. So this 29th place finish, right? Maybe that keeps that ceiling performance in him, right? Didn't use it up last week. Was damn close to having that performance, but I'm not going to let that talk him off. At least talk me off of a Kurt Kitayama. The last pick I want to get to here is Davis Riley, and I'm a huge sucker for Davis. I talk him up a lot here on the channel. I play him probably as much as a Jordan Spieth. It's because I'm a sucker for his upside, right? You look at the skill set, right? The off the tee distance. You look at the iron play, right? Where he can gain 6-7 strokes on approach on any given event and then lose a bunch in between and then go out there and pop for another 5-6 strokes gained with the iron play. We know that he's a popper, and we know that when he's able to join up those skill sets on the same week, that it's going to be a win. And that's why a lot of people, run to the window to play this guy. And the reason why I want to get him this week is, first off, it's an off the tee course. That's his best asset, so we know he can lean into that. He's also a relatively solid iron player. The shots gained metrics back up both of those emphatically. You can see off the tee hasn't been his strength, at least over the last 36 rounds. But long-term sample size, Davis Riley is one of the better off the tee players that we have on tour. Hits it an absolute country mile. And on approach, has been gaining close to 2/3 of a stroke per round. So though the accuracy hasn't really been there of late, it's not a course in a TPC Scottsdale where you can just wail away at it off the tee. There are natural areas you can get into, but you have to miss by a solid 30, 40 yards to get into those. So as long as Davis is keeping it on planet Earth, I think he will be all right this week here for the Waste Management Phoenix Open. But the approach play has been there. And then on these, Bermuda overseeded greens, look at this. He's gaining half a stroke per round, an entire stroke better than his baseline over the last 36. You saw him have success at the Valspar Championship. You saw him have success at a few of the other Florida events where you have this Bermuda overseed situation. And throughout the rest of the season at like an Amex, that sort of thing, he's gone out there and gained in bunches. So again, it's not a massive sample size, but like a Davis Riley, like what we had with Sam Burns, where it was a 53-round sample size. But it's over, I believe, 16 rounds for Davis Riley at this point, right? So he played 4 events with these sort of greens and has gone out there and made a habit of gaining on them. So I like his prospects this week. You can see the event history. He did play here once 2 years ago, which was surprising to me, right? He didn't play here last year because he was a rookie on tour, but I think he was a sponsor's exemption there 2 years ago, made the cut and finished in 58th there. So that's actually why when he came on the tour, he was one of the few players that we actually had shots gained metrics for, was because he had that sponsor's exemption and was able to make it through the weekend in one of the strongest fields of golf. You take a look at the recent form, you can see his boom bust potential, right? A bunch of missed cuts, right? 65th right there, showing a lot of the negative end of the spectrum, but you can see top 25, almost a top 25 finish back there. And the further back you go, he pops up with that top 5 every once in a while, especially in this rookie season, right? A couple top 5 finishes. He's $6,800. He has a lot more of that top-end upside than most players. Not every player in this range. There's a few more boom-bust guys, like a Scott Stallings kind of sticks out, right? A Luke List. He's capable of going out there and having those kind of ceiling performances. But the key differentiator for me are just the putting stats, right? He's just gone out there and popped before out here. So whether it's a familiarity thing, whether it's just his style of putting that thrives on these sort of greens, it's something I want to target and an edge I'm looking to exploit. All right, fellas, that is all I've got for this week's value plays. Before you hopping out of here, go ahead and comment down below who you're targeting, priced to $8,000 below on DraftKings, and give me a little nugget why. Right, I'm gonna go ahead and take Kitayama. Right, I think that little Sunday meltdown. It's time for him to go out there, redeem himself. We know he's striking it well, and hopefully it keeps people off of him, right? You see that little Sunday meltdown, you go, wow, in this strong of a field, he has no chance of getting into contention. Watch him, right? Bet. Kitayama, I think he's a little stronger mentally than people might give him credit for, so we'll have to see there. So I like the ownership, I like the play. Let me know who you're targeting down there in that range. Also, go ahead and smash that like button before hopping on out of here too, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already as well. Don't miss any of the content when it drops, whether it's our live stream tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. Eastern time, or all of the content for the rest of the season. I cover Showdown for rounds 2 through 4, go through the weather for the next slate, go through some of the chalk, all of your questions down in chat. We do live streams for those. I go over prize picks for round 1. I'll have a video dropping later on tonight with some of my props and my preview there for Thursday. And for our live streams for rounds 2 through 4, we go over prize picks on those too. So a lot of content, not just the stuff I'm putting out before the week, which I know a lot of you guys tune into, but make sure to check out some of the live content. It's a little bit more catered to you guys, and we tend to have a lot of fun on them. We'll booze a little bit on there, make some jokes, which is pretty fun. And sometimes I'll be trying to pick up some of the memorabilia that's behind me, drop it on stream. We'll have things crashing down, that sort of thing. You never know what to expect on the good old Gsluke stream. But like I said, guys, I appreciate the support. Make sure to comment down below your favorite value play, smash that like button, and I'll see you guys for the live stream tomorrow night.